I stared at the extravagant wedding invitation in my hands, its gold foil lettering catching the morning light. My sister Olivia's face beamed from the engagement photo, her 4-carat diamond ring prominently displayed. The date jumped out at me, June 15th, exactly 1 week after my 30th birthday. Isn't it beautiful? Mom gushed, adjusting the massive flower arrangements she was reviewing for the wedding. Our family home's dining room had transformed into wedding central, with samples of everything from linens to place cards scattered across every surface. The invitations alone cost more than my first car. I set the invitation down carefully. It's lovely, Mom. For Olivia. Oh, speaking of dates, Dad cleared his throat, shuffling through some papers, probably more wedding bills. About your birthday celebration next week. I already knew what was coming. Every major milestone in my life had somehow been overshadowed by Olivia's achievements. My high school graduation party had been scaled down because of her college acceptance celebration. My college graduation dinner became a quick pizza affair because she'd landed her first corporate job that same week. We're going to have to cancel your birthday dinner, Dad continued, not quite meeting my eyes. With all the wedding expenses. Mom jumped in, her voice bright with forced cheerfulness. We're using the money we set aside for your party for the wedding. You understand, don't you, dear? It's Olivia's special day after all. Of course it was. Every day was Olivia's special day in this family. The country club deposit alone was astronomical, Dad added, as if that somehow made it better. And then there's the house. Yes, the house. The infamous Kingston Manor. A sprawling Victorian mansion that had been my parents' dream home for as long as I could remember. They'd been trying to buy it for years, and now with Olivia's wedding approaching, they'd finally made an offer. We're still waiting to hear back from the sellers, Mom sighed dreamily. Can you imagine Olivia walking down those grand stairs in her wedding dress? It would be perfect. I smiled tightly, thinking of the email I'd received just that morning from my real estate agent. Yes, perfect. Now about your birthday, Mom continued, barely pausing for breath. We thought maybe we could do a small lunch the week after the wedding. Nothing fancy, just family. Don't worry about it, I cut her off, standing up. I have plans anyway. Dad looked relieved. Oh good, you understand then. With the wedding and the house purchase. Of course I understand, I said quietly. I've had 30 years to understand exactly where I stand in this family's priorities. Mom frowned. Don't be dramatic, sweetie. It's just that Olivia's wedding is such a huge expense, and with the house. My phone buzzed, another email from my agent. Kingston Manor papers ready for final signature. Sellers eager to close. I should go, I said, gathering my things. I have meetings. Still doing that investment thing? Dad asked vaguely, already turning back to the wedding paperwork. I paused at the door. Something like that. What they didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask about, was that my investment thing had grown into one of the most successful private equity firms in the city. While they'd been focused on Olivia's corporate climb and perfect life trajectory, I'd been quietly building an empire. The same empire that had just purchased Kingston Manor through a shell company 3 days ago. Outside, my driver James held the car door open. The office, Ms. Mitchell? No, I said, sliding into the back seat. Take me to Kingston Manor. It's time to inspect my new property. The grand Victorian mansion appeared around the curve of the private drive, its elegant architecture even more impressive in person. My parents had dreamed of owning this house for 20 years. Now I owned it. My phone buzzed again, a message from the selling agent. Ms. Mitchell, your parents just called again about their offer. When should I tell them the house has already been sold? I looked up at the house, my house, and thought about all the cancelled celebrations, all the dismissed achievements, all the times I'd been pushed aside for Olivia's sake. Tell them nothing yet, I replied. Let's wait until after my birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd cancelled my 30th birthday party to help pay for Olivia's wedding and their dream house. Little did they know I already owned their perfect venue. Inside the mansion, my footsteps echoed through the grand entrance hall. The sweeping staircase that Mom had imagined Olivia descending in her wedding dress. The ballroom where they'd planned to host the reception. The gardens where the ceremony would take place. My assistant Margaret appeared with a stack of documents. The renovation team is ready to start whenever you give the word. Though, She hesitated. I should mention that your sister's wedding planner called. They want to schedule a viewing of the property. I walked to the window looking out over the manicured grounds. Schedule it for next Thursday, my birthday. Make sure both my parents come too. And should I prepare the ownership papers for their review? A slow smile spread across my face. Yes. It's time they learned exactly what my investment thing has become. The week leading up to my birthday passed in a blur of deliberate preparations. I had the mansion's grand ballroom meticulously restored, crystal chandeliers polished to perfection, and the antique hardwood floors refinished. Every detail was orchestrated for maximum impact. My parents hadn't called once about my cancelled birthday, too busy with Olivia's wedding plans. However, they'd called the selling agent of Kingston Manor 17 times, increasingly desperate to secure their dream venue for the perfect wedding. Thursday morning arrived crisp and bright. I stood in the mansion's master study, watching through the window as my family's car pulled up the circular driveway. My mother's excited chatter drifted through the open windows as they stepped out, followed by Olivia and her wedding planner, Miranda. "Oh, it's even more magnificent than I remembered," Mom gushed, craning her neck to take in the full grandeur of the house. "Just imagine the wedding photos on that front steps." "The previous owners must have already sold," Dad mused, noticing the recent renovations. "I hope they'll still consider our offer." Olivia adjusted her designer sunglasses. "They'd better. I've already told everyone I'm getting married here. It would be so embarrassing to change venues now." I smiled, smoothing down my tailored suit. Right on cue, Margaret appeared at my side. "They're all here. The selling agent is keeping them in the foyer. Should I bring them to the ballroom?" "Give me 5 minutes," I replied. "Let them stew a bit." I watched through the security feed as they waited impatiently in the grand entrance hall. Mom was touching the newly restored wallpaper, Dad was checking his watch, and Olivia was complaining about the wait to her wedding planner. Finally, I nodded to Margaret. "Show them in." The ballroom doors opened majestically as my family was ushered inside. They gasped collectively at the transformation. The room sparkled with restored glory, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across the gleaming floors, floor-to-ceiling windows framed by silk drapes, and a grand piano positioned perfectly in the corner. "Welcome to Kingston Manor," I said, stepping out from the adjacent study. The shock on their faces was priceless. Mom's hand flew to her throat. Dad's jaw dropped. Olivia's perfect composure cracked. "Alexandra." Mom stammered. What are you doing here?" "I'm here to show you the property," I replied smoothly. "After all, you wanted to see your dream house, didn't you?" Dad stepped forward, confusion evident on his face. "But, how? Why are you?" "Oh, didn't the selling agent tell you?" I smiled, walking to the center of the ballroom. "I'm not just showing you the property. I own it." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the wedding planner stopped her incessant typing on her tablet. "That's impossible," Olivia finally sputtered. "You can't afford, with your little investment work." I laughed softly. "My little investment work, as you call it, Olivia, is now Mitchell Global Investments. We manage over $3 billion in assets. Kingston Manor." I gestured around the room. This was a minor acquisition. Mom sank onto one of the antique chairs. But we've been trying to buy this house." "Yes, I know. For 20 years this has been your dream home. Just like for 20 years, I've been the daughter whose achievements you never bothered to notice." I walked to the windows, looking out over the immaculate gardens. "Did you know I made Forbes 30 Under 30 list last year?" "Probably not. You were too busy planning Olivia's engagement party." "Did you know my company was featured in the Wall Street Journal?" "No, because that was the week of Olivia's bridal shower." "Alexandra, please," Dad started, but I held up my hand. "Let me finish. You canceled my 30th birthday party, a milestone celebration, to pay for this house and Olivia's wedding. Well, guess what? I bought the house instead." Olivia stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "You did this on purpose. You knew I needed this venue for my wedding." "Actually, I bought it because it was a sound investment. The fact that it ruins your perfect wedding plans." I turned to face them fully. "Consider that karma for 30 years of being treated like an afterthought." "We can pay you," Mom said quickly. "Whatever you spent on it." "This isn't about money," I cut her off. This is about recognition. About respect. About finally making you see what you've been too blind to notice all these years. I nodded to Margaret, who distributed folders to each of them. Inside you'll find documentation of my company's holdings, press clippings you never bothered to read, and achievements you never thought to celebrate. They flipped through the pages in stunned silence, their faces growing paler with each revelation. The Wilson Corporate Tower downtown? I own it. That tech startup Dad said would never succeed? I funded it. It's worth $200 million now. The luxury hotel chain Mom loves so much? I sit on their board of directors. The wedding planner cleared her throat nervously. Should I, perhaps, look for alternative venues? Before anyone could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it and smiled. If you'll excuse me, I have a conference call with our Tokyo office. Margaret will show you out. Wait. Mom called as I reached the door. What about Olivia's wedding? I paused, looking back at them. You know what's ironic? If you had bothered to keep my birthday dinner plans, you would have been celebrating at my house anyway. I was going to surprise you with the news then. Funny how things work out, isn't it? As I walked away, I heard Olivia's outraged voice. She can't do this. It's my wedding. But she was wrong. I could do this. And I had. The days following the Kingston Manor revelation were a tsunami of family drama. My phone was flooded with messages, Mom's tearful voicemails, Dad's awkward attempts at reconciliation, and Olivia's increasingly hostile demands about her wedding venue. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the major telecommunications merger my firm was orchestrating. Success, I'd learned, was the best armor against family guilt trips. Then, exactly 1 week after the revelation, my assistant Margaret entered my office with an unusual message. Your grandmother is here to see you. That got my attention. Grandma Rose, my father's mother, was the family matriarch and the one person I'd always respected. She'd built a successful restaurant chain from a single diner in the 1960s, fighting sexism and skepticism every step of the way. Send her in, I said, closing my laptop. Grandma Rose entered with her characteristic grace, immaculately dressed as always. At 78, she still commanded every room she entered. Quite an office you have here, she observed, taking in the panoramic city views. Though I expected nothing less from you. You knew? I asked, gesturing for her to sit. She smiled, settling into the chair. Alexandra, I've been tracking your career since you started. Who do you think was the anonymous investor who gave you your first major capital injection? I stared at her, stunned. 5 years ago, when my firm was just starting, an anonymous investor had provided $2 million in seed funding. That investment had been crucial to our early growth. That was you. Of course it was me. I recognized that same fire in you that I had, the determination to build something of your own. She leaned forward. But that's not why I'm here today. Let me guess, Mom sent you to negotiate about the house? Grandma Rose laughed. Oh, they tried to recruit me for that mission. But no, I'm here because it's time you heard the whole story about Kingston Manor. She opened her handbag and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a much younger version of herself standing in front of the familiar Victorian mansion. That house, she said quietly, was supposed to be mine. Back in 1975, I had a deal to buy it. Your grandfather thought I was crazy, a woman trying to buy such an expensive property on her own. The day before closing, the sellers backed out. They'd received a better offer, from a prominent businessman. They didn't think a woman in the restaurant business was a suitable owner. I took the photograph, studying it carefully. I never knew. No one did. I kept that disappointment to myself and channeled it into building my business bigger than anyone thought possible. She smiled. Sound familiar? So when Mom and Dad talked about buying it, I watched history repeating itself. They dismissed your achievements just like people dismissed mine. But you. She reached across and squeezed my hand. You did what I couldn't. You bought that house on your own terms with your own money, built from your own success. Tears pricked at my eyes. I didn't do it for revenge. No, you did it to be seen. To be acknowledged. And believe me, they see you now. She straightened in her chair. But the question is, what are you going to do with that recognition? I looked out at the city skyline, thinking about family, legacy, and the true meaning of success. What would you do? I'd show them that real power isn't in punishment, It's in grace. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. Your sister's wedding is in 3 weeks. The invitations are sent. Dreams are invested. You have the perfect opportunity to be either the villain or the hero of this story. She walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Alexandra. Happy belated birthday. I think it's time for a proper celebration, don't you? After she left, I sat for a long time looking at the photograph and thinking about generations of strong women fighting to be recognized. Finally, I called Margaret in. Schedule a family dinner, I said. Here's what I need you to arrange. 3 days later, my family gathered nervously in Kingston Manor's formal dining room. The table was set with the finest china, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and through the windows, the garden was lit with thousands of tiny lights. Before we begin, I said, standing at the head of the table, I have some announcements to make. I handed each of them an envelope. First, these are the new contracts for Olivia's wedding. Kingston Manor is yours for the entire week of celebrations, no charge. Olivia's hands trembled as she opened the contract. Really? Yes, really. But there's a condition. I smiled. The day before your wedding, we're hosting another celebration here. My 30th birthday party, the one that was cancelled. And you're all required to attend. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. Alexandra, we don't deserve. No, you don't, I agreed. But family isn't about deserving. It's about growing, learning, and sometimes forgiveness. Dad cleared his throat. We've been terrible parents to you. Yes, you have. But starting tonight, we're going to work on changing that. I lifted my glass. Starting with you all listening to a detailed presentation about my company's latest acquisitions. They laughed, a genuine relieved laugh that broke the tension. And one more thing, I added, locking eyes with Mom and Dad. After Olivia's wedding, we need to discuss your living arrangements. This house has plenty of room, and I hear the previous owners are looking to downsize. The look of joy and disbelief on their faces made everything worth it. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing people who you've become despite their doubts. As we sat down to dinner, Grandma Rose's words echoed in my mind. Real power isn't in punishment, it's in grace. Looking around the table at my imperfect but learning family, I realized she was right. Success wasn't just about proving them wrong, it was about being strong enough to help them do better. And in that moment, in my house on my terms, I felt truly successful at last.